Inside Yunshao's sect. A slim and graceful girl was donned in white and stood in a room. Her stunning looks enchanted many. Yi Sun stood by the side of that girl, and though Yi Sun had beautiful features, it seemed lacking when compared to those of the girl in white. After she was chased out of the Yi residence by Yi Qingtang, the Great Elder sent her to Yunshao's sect and had only just reached today. Yi Qingtang seriously still has a spirit root. The girl in white read through the letter slowly. Her pretty brows were slightly furrowed, and her eyes shone, seeming to be rather displeased. Yi Qingtang looked down without daring to make eye contact. Sister Yu, Yi Qingtang indeed still has a spirit root and received Mu Su's help this time. I'm afraid she might participate in the entrance assessment for Xianling's sect. Grandfather sent me here to let you know about this. He can't interfere in sect matters and will need you to think of a way to not let Yi Qingtang get what she wants. The girl in white who was standing before Yi Sun was none other than Yi Yu, the one who stole Yi Qingtang's spirit root. She was initially the granddaughter of Great Elder, but now, she was a disciple of the Yunshao sect master and held an incomparably prestigious position. You're sure that she has only a red spirit root? Yi Yu asked while raising her eyes a little. Yes. Yi Yu did not hurry to say anything and only raised her hand to straighten her wrinkled sleeve. A red spirit root is the lowest grade of all. I don't think there's any sect with a disciple that has such an inferior spirit root. Yi Sun trembled slightly. Sister Yu, although it is so, Yi Qingtang has been acting strangely in this period of time. In case any unexpected things happen, please do make more preparations still. Yi Yu laughed without emotion. There is someone I know in Xianling's sect, and I'll notify him. If Yi Qingtang does not have the fate to enter Xianling's sect, just let it be. But if she enters, she'll also not be able to leave. When she finished her sentence, a murderous look suddenly flashed across her gentle-looking eyes. Yi Sun was extremely cautious, and she remained silent at his side. Yi Yu was born with an extremely beautiful face, and she had an elegant disposition. However, no one could see that under that beautiful skin laid a heart as vicious as the Great Elder's. Yi Yu took a look at Yi Sun and said, "You don't need to return to the Yi family for now. Just serve me by my side." Yes, Yi Sun agreed obediently. She knew that due to the fact that Yi Qingtang obtained the qualification to participate in a sect's entrance assessment, Duan Tianrao would already be dissatisfied with her. If she returned now, Duan Tianrao may just cancel the engagement because of this. Hence, she decided to avoid meeting him for now. So you're not planning to go back personally, Sister Yu? Yi Yu raised her eyelids slightly, and a lofty smile emerged on her beautiful face. A few days later, Master will teach me Yunshao sect's mystic technique. Once the training for it starts, it'll need to go on for a couple of months without stopping. Furthermore, Yi Yu narrowed her eyes as a cold smile hung on the corner of her lips. Is the current Yi Qingtang even qualified? Sister Yu is indeed right. So what if Yi Qingtang really enters Xianling's sect? How could she compete with you? Yi Sun echoed gently. Yi Yu smiled detachedly. Yi Sun said, "We'll have to trouble that old friend of yours to properly take care of Yi Sun at that time then." Yi Yu laughed lightly. Of course. You can get some rest here. I'll report to Master and let you have the rights to stay in Yunshao's sect. Thank you, Sister Yu. Yi Yu swept a glance across Yi Sun thoughtfully and said, "Sun, you've always been smart. If you use it wisely, it'll naturally treat you well." I understand. It'll definitely be at your beck and call. Yi Sun pledged loyalty immediately. Yi Yu nodded and walked out slowly. Yi Qingtang, I will not let you appear in my life ever again. I've already accepted your spirit root. Now, you should die early. Walk on the path to heaven, enter the sect. If she wanted to cultivate up to a paragon, she could only rely on the sacred sect. It was a journey of half a month. Within the carriage, Enchanting saw an increasingly familiar surrounding before her, and a strange feeling arose within her. She lifted her eyes slightly and looked at the tall mountain not far away. That mountain was steep, and its summit was covered in cloud mist. However, Enchanting was very clear that there was the location of Xianling's sect. Above the vague mist, Xianling's sect stood against the clouds in the sky. Xianling's sect. As Enchanting looked at the cloud mist at the mountain summit, scenes from her previous life flooded her mind. Enchanting, you have the heart of the demon god in your body. Xianling's sect cannot keep you anymore. In her previous life, Enchanting did not have a spirit root and only found a way to model a fake spirit root after searching for a long time. She used that method and finally entered Xianling's sect. However, the her then would never have dreamt that the very entrance became a turning point in her life. Not a good turn, but an abyssal drop. Her heart of the demon god was exposed in a mission, and she was forced out of the sect. Moreover, a sect elder with evil intentions, along with other disciples in the sect, told the entire world that she possessed the heart of the demon god. Since then, she turned from avoiding Yu to becoming everyone's target of murder. And from the moment she left Xianling's sect, Enchanting was like a person hated by everyone, and she got shouted at and beaten up by many. The news of the heart of the demon god could no longer be hidden. After innumerable twists and turns, Enchanting chose Xianling's sect once again in this life. This time, it was not only to obtain the Black Heaven water but more to seek revenge. In this life, she would not let anyone who harmed her in her previous life off. We're reaching Xianling's sect very soon. Enchanting, are you ready to participate in the sect assessment? Yes voice rang from outside the carriage. Enchanting chuckled with bright eyes, I've been preparing for this moment for too long. Below Xianling's sect and above the clouds was obviously a place with little trace of civilization, yet today, this place was exceptionally bustling. It was difficult for a carriage to ascend the mountain, thus, Yi and Enchanting got off the carriage at the foot of the mountain and walked up to the summit. There were already many people at the summit. In the large groups of people, everyone was donned in luxurious attires and possessed a dignified bearing. Rather, it was Enchanting and Yi, who were both relatively young, who dressed casually and in the least numbers. Yet, everyone noticed them once they reached the summit. These are all people participating in Xianling's sect's entrance assessment? Yi asked Enchanting as they stood aside. He unconsciously looked at the others. Amongst the crowd, it was not difficult to tell that the ones who were really there to participate in the assessment were the young talents while most of the rest were there to send them off. Enchanting nodded slightly. I didn't think that there would actually be so many people. Enchanting estimated that there were at least more than 100 people who were there to participate in Xianling's sect's entrance assessment. It is unknown how many can remain, Enchanting said coolly. Every year, all sects would welcome a large batch of people who wished to enter the sect. However, amongst these hundreds of people, it was already rare for 1/10 of them to enter the sect. Unless one possessed a rare supreme-grade spirit root like Yu did, to obtain the opportunity to enter a sect, one was required to first have a high enough natural endowment and second, a recommendation by a mighty figure. Moreover, these two conditions were merely qualifications for them to participate in a sect's entrance assessment. No one knew whether one could enter. Those are people from the Luyun family clan. C's eyes swept over a group of people not far away. The Luyun family clan is renowned worldwide, and the cultivators produced from this family clan were all deeply powerful. Family clans like the Si and Yi family seemed especially tiny before ones like Luyun's. Enchanting followed C's gaze, and as expected, she saw a group of finely dressed people with elegant demeanors. Leading the group of people was a tall middle-aged man with an extraordinary bearing, and he was quietly talking to a young man. When Enchanting's gaze fell on the male who listened with lowered eyes, something shone in her eyes uncontrollably. Enchanting. Quickly leave. On a stormy night, that handsome youth stood in front of her with his flesh and blood, bearing a fatal blow. Senior Brother Yun. Enchanting mumbled softly as she looked at the side profile of the youth. Enchanting, do you know the people from the Lu Yun family clan? Yi seemed to have sensed Enchanting's abnormal behavior and could not help but ask. Enchanting returned to her senses and shook her head immediately. It was she who owed him. In her previous life, when Enchanting entered the Xianling sect, she experienced difficulty in learning anything due to the absence of spirit root and was, thus, ridiculed by some senior and junior brothers. More than that, she was bullied for not having a family clan background. The only person in Xianling's sect who treated her well was senior brother Yun Shu. But ultimately, Yun Shu died for her, but she did not even have the ability to seek revenge for him. The only warmth in her previous life was slashed away hard on that stormy night. Yi did not think much into it and was slightly shocked as he looked at the crowd. He had always known that it was hard to enter a sect but never expected that despite so, there were even the formidable Heavens Royals here apart from the Lu Yun family clan. Every candidate participating in the entrance assessment had extraordinary backgrounds such that any random person picked out would have a glorious background. And only people with such a social status would attract a mighty figure to recommend them. Big Brother C, there's still a while more until the assessment. You don't need to accompany me. Do head back first, Enchanting said with a smile. Yi originally wanted to stay and accompany Enchanting, but on second thought, if Enchanting failed, she may be embarrassed to face him. Thus, he gave a few orders and descended the mountain without saying anything more, deciding to wait a while more in the carriage at the bottom of the mountain. Once Yi left, Enchanting stood at the summit alone. Her small frame and outstanding appearance attracted much attention. However, the reactions she got were less of shock and more of mockery. Who is that girl? She can't be here to participate in the sect assessment also. Doesn't look like it. All the candidates for the sect assessment today were escorted by many people from their family and had the company of a powerful person who recommended them. Just now, I saw that there was only one young man beside that girl, and he had left. It doesn't seem like they're here for the assessment. Perhaps she's here to see the world. After all, this path to heaven cannot be traversed by normal people. The people who came today had extremely high expectations and could see that Enchanting's lone self was a misfit in this bustling and flourishing age. Enchanting was not at all bothered by those discussions and stood there calmly as she eyed the cloudy horizon. In the previous life, she waited for the path to heaven, the path leading to the sect, to open by herself just like this. Ridicule and coldness, she had long suffered them in her previous life. How would it still bother her in this life? Not anyone can enter a sect. A cold and arrogant voice suddenly traveled into Enchanting's ears. Enchanting took a glance towards the direction of the voice, but what followed immediately was a dissipating of warmth in her eyes and a tug up the corners of her lips. An elegantly dressed young man overflowing with arrogance was standing a few steps away from Enchanting. Beside him were a few servants waiting upon him carefully. The person who spoke was Lu Xiuan, the fifth prince of one of the countries in the formidable Heavens dynasty. The formidable Heavens royals were in control of the current dynasty and held a superior position. The formidable Heavens dynasty built by them was a magnificent dynasty formed by many countries and commanded by the emperor of the formidable Heavens royals. The royal families of each country were all from the formidable Heavens royals, and Lu Xiuan was a prince from one of the many countries in the formidable Heavens dynasty. He had a rather high ability and a proud character. Lu Xiuan was someone more than familiar to Enchanting. In her previous life when Enchanting entered the sect, she did not have a spirit root, and her cultivation was slow. Then, Lu Xiaowen was rather popular amongst the disciples. Enchanting suffered quite a lot of bullying from him and was even made to do things that only a handyman would do. Furthermore, he did not allow her to focus on cultivation like other normal disciples. However, Enchanting was not too bothered by all of that. What really made Enchanting remember Lu Xiaowen was his betrayal. At that time, Enchanting and Lu Xiaowen were out together to deal with matters but were attacked by a high-level spirit animal on the journey. They were unable to defeat it, and when they almost lost their lives, it was the heart of the demon god in Enchanting that unleashed its powers, ultimately saving Lu Xiaowen and the other disciples. Yet, it was that time when Enchanting's heart of the demon god was completely exposed. Lu Xiaowen did not take into consideration that she saved his life and simply spread the news all over the world. Not only was Enchanting forced out of Xianling's sect, but her secret regarding the heart of the demon god could no longer be hidden, resulting in the tragedy of being wanted for her life by everyone. It's not up to you to say who can enter and who cannot, Enchanting scoffed coldly as she looked straight at Lu Xiaowen's rather good-looking face. Lu Xiaowen frowned slightly. As a prince, there were rarely people who would rebut him like this. His face sunk immediately, and he swept a gaze at Enchanting, revealing a look of belittlement when he saw that Enchanting was alone. A sect is prestigious. Many people want to climb up to it, but they should still have some self-awareness. No company by family clan nor send-off from a powerful person. Such an abject person could also come to participate in a sect assessment? The servants beside Lu Xiaowen obviously echoed Lu Xiaowen and went along with his words continuously. Fifth Prince, you have a noble identity. Why fight with people like this? Just let those overconfident people be. Then, shall know that not just anyone can enter a sect. Enchanting raised her brows, and her smile deepened as she looked at the lackeys beside Lu Xiaowen. Noble identity. Everyone is equal before the sect. Even if you're related to the royal family, don't you still have to wait for the assessment like ordinary people? Lu Xiaowen's slightly better expression suddenly turned ugly again because of Enchanting's words. Enchanting did not say anything wrong. Even if he was a noble prince, he still had to participate in the assessment like everyone else, and whether he was able to enter was dependent on his level of talent. The compliments from the servants earlier on now made Lu Xiaowen a little shameful. The argument between Enchanting and Lu Xiaowen attracted much attention. Everyone looked over one after another only to be surprised at their realization. That young girl who was by herself actually got into a conflict with the fifth prince of the formidable heavens royals. Yun Shu, who was chatting with his family clan people, turned around as well. When Yun Shu looked at the calm and breathtaking girl standing alone in front of Lu Xiaowen and his people, curiosity filled his eyes. That lady is young and impetuous. She may be on the losing end, sighed someone from the Lu Yun family clan upon witnessing the sight. Why? Asked Yun Shu. It is still unknown who will be able to enter the sect amongst all the people here today. It is still alright if that young girl enters, as the formidable heavens royals will not dare to do anything to sect disciples. However, if she doesn't pass the assessment and isn't from a renowned family clan, how will she be able to fight the royal family? The person continued. The formidable heavens royals are not magnanimous people. What that fifth prince, Lu Xiaowen, said just now was merely to scare others since he has a powerful identity. The people from Lu Yun family clan disliked the royal family's arrogance. Yun Shu frowned slightly. On the other side, Lu Xiaowen's face darkened, and a cold sneer formed on his lips as he eyed Enchanting. How do I address you? With that said, every onlooker knew that Lu Xiaowen was going to record Enchanting's name down. Enchanting took a look at Lu Xiaowen unhurriedly and said, Lin Town, Enchanting. Without any hesitation, Enchanting directly reported her name and place of origin. Lu Xiaowen scoffed, Enchanting, is it? I'll remember it. Enchanting laughed. You better remember it clearly. She would let this name become Lu Xiaowen's nightmare ultimately. Lu Xiaowen narrowed his eyes slightly. You better pray that you can pass this assessment, otherwise. Lu Xiaowen did not finish his sentence, but everyone knew what was it going to be. Quite a number of people secretly sighed for Enchanting. The sect assessment was not easy, and innumerable people were rejected by sects every year. Now that Lu Xiaowen had asked Enchanting for her name, he would probably not let her off easily in the future. Taking another look at Enchanting, Lu Xiaowen turned around and led his group of lackeys away without forgetting to tell someone beside him, tell Royal Brother to investigate this Enchanting. Yes. Enchanting is still too young. After looking on the scene, people from the Lu Yun family clan even more so felt that Enchanting should not have revealed her identity. However, Yun Shu laughed. Maybe it's because she is confident that she'll pass the assessment. Is a sect assessment that easy though? There's no certainty to pass even if it's you, much less that girl. Yun Shu laughed without saying anything more, though he paid slight attention to Enchanting instinctively. Time passed with every minute and second. At the summit, a bright light from within the cloud layers suddenly shone down. The gold light gathered to form an imaginary path which connected the summit to the clouds. The path to heaven. Everyone seemed to stop breathing the moment they saw the gold light. To enter the sect, they needed to step on the path to heaven. Almost at the same time, all the highly skilled candidates fixed their eyes on the light before them in silent concentration. Go ahead. The Lu Yun family clan people patted Yun Shu's shoulders. Giving a nod, Yun Shu immediately headed towards the path to heaven. The candidates standing at the summit went forward as well. What lay before their eyes was merely a holy beam of light and not a single step. Everyone was confused how exactly to stably walk on the legendary path to heaven. Walk on the path to heaven and enter a sect, this was a sentence everyone knew. However, with the path to heaven right before their eyes, little did they know what to do. The path to heaven was laid only for people in a sect. If one could not even walk on the path stably, it would not be possible for them to enter a sect. It was the simplest step, but also the beginning of a sect assessment. No one dared to go forward, as they were deeply afraid that they would miss such a rare chance due to a small mistake. However, where could they step on in this beam of light? Everyone did not dare to step forward and instead fell into a dead silence at that moment. However, a thin figure stepped out from the silent crowd and walked to under the holy light. Enchanting stood at the starting point of the path to heaven with an unusually calm heart as she looked at the light that connected to the skyline. Xianling's sect, she was back again. In the next instant, Enchanting raised her feet gently with a calm expression. When her toes stepped into the light, a gold halo formed into a golden lotus under her feet, supporting the feet when it landed. A lotus with every step. Shock filled everyone's eyes as they looked at the translucent golden lotus, that was about the size of a palm, under Enchanting's feet. However, Enchanting did not pay attention to those people and only quietly walked up the path to heaven that she could not be more familiar with. Everyone was taken aback on the side as they looked at Enchanting walk into the holy light as if she was walking on flat ground. Wherever she raised her leg, a lotus flower would bloom. The lotuses, which were higher level by level, were like steps laid out one by one, appearing when Enchanting's foot was going to land and disappearing without a trace when she stepped off. Looking from afar, it was as if Enchanting was floating in midair as she stepped on the golden lotuses with holy light showering on her. Such a miraculous scene stunned many candidates, and even those who accompanied the candidates there with no good impressions of Enchanting were surprised by Enchanting's collectedness. She was so calm and collected, as though she was walking this path for the umpteenth time. In the blink of an eye, Enchanting was already 10 meters away from the ground. Everyone returned to their senses from the surprise and immediately got moving. Those who were previously afraid to step forward rushed up instantly, imitated Enchanting, and walked up in the holy light. When the first lotus formed under their feet, many hearts fluttered, and they instinctively raised another leg to continue walking up. However, thump! The person who was the most anxious stepped on air as the lotus under his feet disappeared, falling right on the floor. What happened? A look of confusion was seen on the person who fell. He clearly saw the lotus forming under his feet. Why, then, did it disappear when he stepped down? All the subsequent people who went forward could not proceed a step further and fell down after at most 2 or 3 steps. They did not manage to walk up the path to heaven and fell to become a muddy mess instead. Everyone felt gloomy instantly. Why could Enchanting walk up the path to heaven so easily, but they're so battered up? Yunshu did not rush to go forward. Only after observing for a moment, he took a few deep breaths, calmed his heart, and stepped onto the path to heaven. A lotus bloomed under his foot. Although it was slightly unstable, it became stable very quickly. Yunshu finally became the second person who walked up the path to heaven, though his speed was much slower than Enchanting's. Every step he took was with extreme caution. Lu Xiaowen's face turned ugly. He tried to step on the path to heaven earlier on and almost fell as well. Dissatisfaction flashed in his eyes as he saw that Enchanting had already walked into the cloud mist. Young Master Yun, how is one able to walk on the path to heaven? Lu Xiaowen took a deep breath and suddenly asked Yunshu. It was absolutely impossible for him to ask Enchanting. Yunshu flashed a faint smile as he turned around kindly and replied, "A heart like still water, with calmness and patience." Yunshu's words surprised Lu Xiaowen. Calmness and patience. A heart like still water. Lu Xiaowen took another look at the path to heaven and stepped on it after making slight adjustments. This time, he put down all the restlessness in his heart, and the lotus under his feet never disappeared. With a calm mind, Lu Xiaowen immediately chased up. While Enchanting's speed was faster than everyone else, she still heard the conversation between Lu Xiaowen and Yunshu previously. She paused for a while and looked at Lu Xiaowen, who was already walking up the path to heaven under Yunshu's directions, and a faint smile played on her lips. Senior brother Yun was still so kind-hearted as in her previous life. The path to heaven was the first segment of the sect assessment, and only people with a heart as calm as still water would be able to have a lotus with every step and step on the clouds. Any distracted person would definitely fall. Moreover, the path to heaven was extremely long, and one would still fall if they were slightly doubtful halfway through. In the previous years, many fell from a great height and died while walking on the path to heaven. Enchanting knew that with Yunshu's character, he would definitely be able to guess the secret behind the path. Rather, it was Lu Xiaowen who got a bargain. She did not mind to let Lu Xiaowen fall a few more times. After stopping for a while, Enchanting continued heading forward. With Yunshu's directions, many started to adjust their mentality, and the people on the path to heaven increased gradually. Nonetheless, there were also overly anxious people who could not step on it no matter how. This was an assessment. Filter good-for-nothings away, and only those who remained had the qualifications to proceed. Even if you came from a prestigious family, it was merely a fleeting cloud before sections. Candidates were already on the path to heaven, and most of the people who accompanied the candidates were aware that those who could not step on the path were either too weak in the mind or trying to fake their way through. The path to heaven was only opened for qualified candidates. Every candidate would have on them an item such as a letter or accessory from the powerful person who recommended them. Those items were stained with the powerful person's aura, and only with the presence of the aura would one be qualified to step on the path to heaven. Otherwise, no matter how badly they fell, they would still not be able to enter. I made a misjudgment, someone from the Lu Yun family clan muttered suddenly while looking at the increasing number of people on the path to heaven. I didn't think that Enchanting would capable enough to become the first person walking up the path to heaven. Yun Shu even benefited from her. I've never heard of the Yi family clan from Lin Town. If her spirit root is alright, perhaps she will be able to become something, said a sharp-eyed person as he saw Enchanting's specialness. The path to heaven was way too easy for her, and this was unexpected for others. One had to be careful with every step they took on the path to heaven. The higher they walked up, the calmer their emotions should be. Being more than 100 meters away from the ground, one would definitely die if they fell. Everyone was on alert, and many were already soaked in sweat before they even got far. Only Enchanting was walking leisurely as though she was singing and dancing merrily. From time to time, she looked at the birds that were flying past nearby her. Her cheerful and contented posture earned the exasperation of the candidates behind as they gritted their teeth. Who knew where that little girl was from to walk up the path to heaven so leisurely as though she was strolling in her own courtyard? After some time, Enchanting finally reached the end of the path to heaven. At the top of the clouds shone a radiant light. A magnificent palace stood on the clouds. It had open pavilions and terraces and was shaded by surrounding trees. Facing against the sun, it was as though the holy light was shining from behind the sect. If one did not witness it personally, they would be unable to imagine that the sect was actually positioned on top of the cloud layers. No wonder ordinary people never knew where the sects were at. One could know how scary the powerful people within the sect were to be able to build a sect on the clouds and bear thousands of disciples in it. At the end of the path to heaven was Xianling sect's main entrance, where its gates, that were several meters high, were carved with huge dragons. Outside the gate, a middle-aged man in a light blue long gown stood in front of the door with a few Xianling sect disciples behind him. Enchanting finished ascending the path to heaven and stepped on the clouds, which seemed soft but were in fact extremely steady. The middle-aged man looked up and took a look at Enchanting's face as surprise filled him. The path to heaven was difficult to walk on, especially for people who stepped on it for the first time. There was nothing below their feet, and looking around, one would see that they were several hundred meters high in the sky. Just the scenery was enough to send those with an immature mind into a flurry. However, he observed from outside the sect door just now that this young girl was in the lead. Her steps were steady, and she had a casual demeanor. There was neither a trace of fluster nor nervousness. Just this first impression satisfied the middle-aged man. The disciple behind him walked forward, and before saying anything, Enchanting consciously handed Mu Su's letter over. The middle-aged man took another look at Enchanting and gave her a slight nod after receiving the letter, signaling for Enchanting to stand aside. Enchanting was fast. A large group of people behind were still struggling in difficulty. A long time later, Yun Shu was the second person who finally reached the end. While he had a calm and steady nature, he still walked this path very cautiously without daring to increase his speed. Along with Yun Shu's arrival, Lu Xiuan and other candidates ascended the path to heaven successively. While more than 100 of candidates came, Enchanting estimated that only about 100 people managed to ascend the path to heaven. There were at least dozens of people filtered out by the path to heaven. These dozens of people no longer had the chance to enter a sect. After looking at the color of the sky, the middle-aged man standing outside the sect gate waved his hand gently, and the holy light sprinkled on the clouds vanished instantly. Subsequently, the path to heaven which led the way to the sect disappeared without a trace. The struggling people who were still halfway through were sent back to the ground by golden lotuses. Cries, screams, and begging filled the air immediately. The path to the sect was now an extravagant wish. Enchanting did not have much reaction to it, as she had seen such scenes too many times. Many thanks. A voice rang beside Enchanting suddenly. She looked over in confusion only to see Yunshu, whose cheeks were slightly dotted with sweat, standing beside her since God knows when. Why are you thanking me? Enchanting raised her brows as she looked at her old friend from her previous life. Yunshu chuckled, if Miss Yi didn't take the first step just now, I would not have been able to understand the secret behind the path to heaven. Moreover, Yunshu purposely fixed his eyes on Enchanting along the way in order to keep his mind at peace. Without looking at the scenery below his feet, his heart was naturally calmer. For the people behind, it was indeed easier if someone took the lead. However, no one had ever said anything about it before the assessment. After all, they were all rivals on the land of the sect. Enchanting looked at Yunshu with a seeming smile. When will this senior brother Yun finally be able to get rid of his habit of being a mighty nice person? Chapter 99. However, Yunshu always had the same personality. This was the reason why he took care of Enchanting in her previous life even though she had almost no endowment. Enchanting could not help but laugh when she thought about her previous life. However, when she remembered Yunshu's destiny in her previous life, her eyes suddenly appeared to be fierce. Senior brother Yun saved her once in the previous life. This time, she would ensure that he had nothing to worry about in his entire life. Yunshu did not know what Enchanting was thinking about. He thanked her wholeheartedly. However, a pair of fierce and evil eyes scanned Enchanting and Yunshu. Lu Xiaowen squinted his eyes. He had a decent endowment. The only person he could treat as an opponent in this assessment was Yunshu, born in the Luyun family clan. However, he did not expect that Yunshu would be so gentle towards Enchanting. Candidates who finished the path to heaven were waiting for further assessment. They were not aware that their behaviors were observed by the faction elders from the shiny pearl on the sect door. What do you think of the candidates this year? Anyone suitable? One of the faction elders was observing through the water moon mirror and asked the rest of the elders. Not many stand out this year. But I think Yunshu from the Lu Yun family and Lu Xiaowen from the formidable Heavens dynasty are not too bad. They should be able to pass the assessment. One of the elder touched his beard and said. Both Yunshu and Lu Xiaowen have a good background and endowment. As the elder of the sword faction, Elder Lin, you have a sharp sight. Candidates who passed the assessment could enter Xianling's sect and become outer sect disciples. After training, they then had the opportunity to enter the inner sect. Within Xianling's sect, there were the sword faction, herbal faction, array faction, and fist faction. Among the four factions, the sword faction was the strongest. Xianling's sect was famous for its sword sect. Elder Lin was the person in charge of the sword faction. He stood at quite a high position among the elders. Besides Elder Lin, the rest of the elders of other factions also focused on Lu Xiaowen and Yunshu. While everyone fixed their eyesights on the two people, one small-figured elder with an extremely sharp sight noticed the girl who was chatting with Yunshu through the water moon mirror. All of you think highly of Yunshu and Lu Xiaowen, but I feel this girl is quite interesting. The elder smiled and said. The rest of the elders turned and stared at him. I think the girl was recommended by Mu Su. She is called Enchanting with no special background. No one has heard of this name as well. The elder of the herbal faction said. Enchanting. Is she from the Yi family of Lin Town? The elder of the fist faction raised his eyebrows slightly and said. The Yi family of Lin Town was not famous in the past. However, there was a genius with a green spirit root who became the disciple of Yunshao's sect. I think Enchanting is from the same family. However, it would be impossible for Enchanting to stand out when there is Yu. Elder Lin took a glance and showed no more interest. It was a miracle for a not-so-famous family clan to have a genius. It would be impossible to have two. Things are not predictable. I like this girl a lot. Just now on the path to heaven, she was much more stable than the two people from the Liu Yun family and the formidable Heavens dynasty. The elder who had a special preference for Enchanting did not bother with what the rest said. The path to heaven only focuses on one's state of mind and not their endowment. Even though the array faction that you are in charge of does not have high requirements for spirit root, you should not be so confident of that now, Elder Qin. Elder Lin glanced at the elder. We shall wait to see her spirit root then. The elder of the herbal faction suggested. Chapter 100. The first step of the sect assessment was to assess the candidate's spirit roots. Red ones were inferior grade, orange and yellow ones were medium grade, and green ones were superior grade. If one possessed a bluish-green spirit root, they would be able to skip the outer sect and become an inner sect disciple immediately. As for blue and purple spirit roots, no one had seen one for over 1,000 years. None of the sect were still hoping for that. The way Xianling sect assessed spirit roots was rather special. It did not require candidates to show their spirit root. Instead, they would place their hands on a human-sized spirit stone and direct their strength using their spirit root. The spirit stone would change into the same color as their spirit root. The order people were tested was based on the sequence in which people finished the path to heaven, starting from the last. The first candidate stepped forward and placed his hand on the spirit stone. Soon, the ivory stone turned yellow in color. Yellow spirit root. Next, a middle-aged man who was in charge of the assessment said. That candidate was quite delighted. His yellow spirit root was inferior to a green spirit root, but he was qualified to enter the sect at least. Candidates who followed up all showed yellow or orange colors. At last, Lu Xiuwen stepped forward. Everyone focused on him, and even the middle-aged man who was bored with orange and yellow colors also showed some interest. Lu Xiuwen walked towards the giant spirit stone and placed his hand on the stone. At that instant, a spark of green appeared and covered the entire spirit stone within a second. Green spirit root, not bad. The middle-aged man looked at Lu Xiuwen in contentment. Green spirit root was quite rare. Disciples with green spirit roots could all enter the inner sect after training in the outer sect. Lu Xiuwen was expected to be an inner sect disciple with his green spirit root. Lu Xiuwen smiled gently. He lifted up his chin slightly and stepped back when everyone looked at him with admiration. I think Lu Xiuwen definitely can pass the assessment since he is from the formidable Heavens dynasty. I agree. He stands out with that green spirit root. Even if the other assessments are not up to expectation, his spirit root will grant him into the sect. Candidates who had their spirit roots assessed could not help but envy him. There were many sect assessments. One would fail if they made any mistake. However, a green spirit root would serve as insurance to cover for any possible mistakes in other assessments. One would need to pass all assessments successfully if their spirit roots were not superior. For example, they would say goodbye to the sect if they made any mistake in any assessment with their orange or yellow spirit roots. Yun Shu was the next person after Lu Xiuwen. Yun Shu was not arrogant like Lu Xiuwen. He smiled gently and nodded towards the middle-aged man with respect. He then placed his hand on the spirit stone. Another round of applause was heard when the green color appeared. Green spirit root. The middle-aged man was in a very good mood now. It made the assessment this year more interesting when two green spirit roots appeared. The better the quality of one's spirit root, the faster the speed of cultivation. Their strength would be purer as well. The quality of spirit root served as the foundation for a person. One could achieve higher levels with a better spirit root. Yunshu stepped back humbly and looked towards Yi Qingtang instinctively. Yi Qingtang's spirit root was the only one left to assess among all candidates. Everyone was staring at Yi Qingtang now. No one forgot how easily Yi Qingtang achieved the first place on the path to heaven, and she was ahead of everyone. Lu Xiuwen also gazed at Yi Qingtang. His sight was less calm but more doubtful. Yi Qingtang had gained an advantage through the path to heaven. If her spirit root was of good quality, she would be another popular candidate whom he had to fight with to enter the sect. Chapter 101, 101. Lu Xiuwen's target was not just to enter the Xianling sect but also to be the top person. As such, he would catch the elders' attention. He would not allow anyone to mess up his plan. Within the sect, the four elders also focused on Yi Qingtang. She performed too well on the path to heaven, and she definitely caught their attention. Especially, Elder Qin of the Array faction stared closely without blinking once. Yi Qingtang walked towards the spirit stone under everyone's gaze. She slowly raised her hand and tried to adjust her spirit root. Continuous strands of aura slowly diffused into the spirit stone through her palm. The ivory stone then started changing color. Instantly, the stone was covered by red color. Just that there was a glimpse of orange in that red color. When the color stabilized, the whole place was silent. The middle-aged man who had great hope was also stunned. Based on Yi Qingtang's behaviors on the path to heaven just now, he was expecting at least a yellow or green spirit root, maybe even better. He could not imagine that Yi Qingtang would possess the most inferior red spirit root. Anyone could have a red spirit root. It could be found everywhere. Even though her spirit root also showed a slight orange color, but it was not up to the level of an orange spirit root. It was still regarded as a red spirit root. Everyone was astonished at that moment. No one expected that Yi Qingtang possessed such a low-quality spirit root. Lu Xiuwen, who was holding his breath, felt relieved. The concern in his eyes was immediately replaced with sarcasm when he saw the red color. He thought that Yi Qingtang possessed superior spirit root and that was why she dared to challenge him previously. However, he did not think that it was just a red spirit root. Yunshu was also stunned slightly, as he did not expect the outcome. The four elders in the sect showed different expressions when they saw the red color. The elders of the Herbal faction and Fish faction did not bother so much, but Elder Lin of the Sword faction showed despise on his face. He tilted his head and looked towards Elder Qin, who was taken aback. Elder Qin, I think this time you got the wrong person. Elder Qin felt a bit embarrassed as he did not expect such an outcome. Among the four factions, his Array faction had the lowest requirements towards spirit root. However, a red spirit root was still way below the requirement. Mu Su had never recommended anyone to the Xianling sect. I thought that she would be a genius since he broke his rules. Who knew? Such a joke. Elder Lin sneered. Red spirit roots were never seen in the sect. Even the outer sect disciples started with orange spirit roots. No one with a red spirit root had ever entered the sect. Elder Qin was made speechless by Elder Lin's words. He frowned and remained silent. Elder Lin chuckled and looked back into the mirror. This year only Yunshu and Lu Xiuwen are not bad. The rest do not deserve our attention. The two elders of the Fish faction and Herbal faction both agreed. Only people with green spirit roots would have hoped to enter the inner sect. Even though both inner and outer sects were under the Xianling sect, the differences between the two sects were unimaginable. Disciples who could not enter the inner sect would not even have a chance to meet the elders. Everyone looked down on Yi Qingtang's red spirit root, and her outstanding behavior from the path to heaven also faded. When everyone was mocking or sighing at Enchanting, she still remained calm. Staring at the spirit stone, her eyes were immersed with an undetectable smile. Her spirit root just leveled up. Initially, her spirit root was just a pure red spirit root. However, after nourishing it with the floating pagoda for a month, her spirit root was about to level up to an orange one. That faint orange color, ignored by the rest, provided Enchanting with great hope. She would need at most one more month to nourish it into an orange spirit root. Afterward, she could reach the yellow spirit root. Even the blue spirit root that appeared for a split second before was not totally impossible now. However, her spirit root would require more nourishment to level up further. The requirement would multiply as it leveled up slowly. If Enchanting really wished to nourish a blue spirit root, that would be a long way to go, and she was not in a rush. Under the sarcastic gaze by the audience, Enchanting put down her hand and stepped back. The middle-aged man stared at Enchanting in a complex way. He was silent for a while, and then asked people to register Enchanting's spirit root level on the booklet. He previously thought that this lady was full of potential, but he did not expect that her spirit root would be one of such low quality. It would be almost impossible to enter the sect with such a spirit root. Whether she would be allowed to enter the sect by the elders was now fully dependent on her performance in the following assessments. Such a pity. To this point, all candidates' spirit root levels were recorded, and the real assessment was just about to begin. Everyone sighed in relief when they witnessed Enchanting's spirit root. They would not want to see another strong competitor when Yunshu and Lu Xiuwen were already present. Spirit root is not that important. There will be more assessments. Yunshu was the only one who talked to Enchanting. He spoke to her slowly and gently. It seemed that he was trying to comfort her. Enchanting smiled slightly. She could clearly notice senior brother Yun's worry from his reaction. It was funny for her, but at the same time, she felt the warmth from his concern. Yunshu finally felt relieved after seeing her smile. We should both strive hard to enter the sect, Yunshu said. Enchanting nodded. Brother Yun, you are always so gentle to all kinds of people. Yunshu and Enchanting heard an unpleasant voice. Enchanting raised her eyes and saw Lu Xiuwen sneering at her sarcastically. Lu Xiuwen took a glimpse at Enchanting and spoke to Yunshu. Everyone knows about Lu Yun family's fame. Am not surprised by Brother Yun's kindness. But you should know what kind of person to befriend. Do not downgrade yourself with your kindness. Yunshu frowned as he disliked Lu Xiuwen's attitude. I know what I am doing, Brother Lu, Yunshu said. Lu Xiuwen did not take it seriously. He turned to look at Enchanting and said, Enchanting, how dare you to come for the sect assessment with this kind of spirit root? If even you can enter the sect, wouldn't the rest of us be useless? Lu Xiuwen did not bother to hide his hostility towards Enchanting. He was very certain that she had no way to enter the sect. He would not let her go easily. Yunshu's face clouded and wanted to speak up for Enchanting. Enchanting suddenly stepped forward and struck back at Lu Xiuwen before Yunshu could. Lu Xiuwen, remember what you just said. She would soon let him understand who was really useless. I will definitely remember that. Lu Xiuwen smiled coldly. The real assessment began after the spirit root test. Based on the inverted order which people completed the path to heaven, Enchanting would be the last person to go. The middle-aged man who was in charge of the assessment led everyone to a place outside the courtyard. The courtyard was peculiar as it was built on top of cloud layers. Multiple 8 trigrams flags served as walls that surrounded the courtyard. The flags were 4 meters in height and stuck closely together. The view inside was totally covered up. The middle-aged man placed his hands back and stared at the candidates. All candidates then stopped chatting and remained silent. This is an illusion array. All candidates are required to enter the array one by one. Illusion array. Various discussions arose among the candidates after the middle-aged man's words. No one knew what this illusion array was, but they were all clear that as a sect assessment, it would not be easy to pass. Senior, do we need to break the array in order to pass the assessment? One of the candidates asked, and that was what the rest were curious of. The middle-aged man shook his head. It would be best if you can break the array. If you can't, we shall see the situation in the array. Do not need to break the array. Everyone became even more curious about the illusion array in front of them. The middle-aged man asked a disciple behind him to distribute wax balls to candidates. There will be combat inside the array. Nothing inside will threaten your life. If you cannot take it anymore, just crush the wax ball, and the illusion array will disperse. You can then leave the array. However, I have to warn you now. The moment you crush the wax ball, the assessment comes to an end. The timing you crush the wax ball and the length of time you can stay in the array will be taken into consideration for the assessment. He said. Combat. The key information in the middle-aged man's words was clearly captured by the candidates. Though he mentioned combat, their life would not be threatened. Furthermore, it was mentioned earlier that they did not need to break the array. It seemed like this assessment was just to test how long they could last in the array. Everyone was not that nervous after figuring out the rules. Even if they could not break the array, they just needed to spend more time in the array. It would not be very difficult. Based on the inverted order which people completed the path to heaven, a young man would be the first person to enter the illusion array. The young man was around 18 to 19 years old. He was tall and possessed an orange spirit root. He did not perform very well on the path to heaven, so he was well prepared now to earn some attention in the array. Are you ready to enter the array? The middle-aged man looked at the excited young man and asked in a deep voice. The young man nodded without any hesitation. The middle-aged man raised his hand, and a path emerged from the closely arranged 8 trigrams flags. The path was covered entirely by fog, and no one could see the view inside clearly. Enter. A command was given. The young man then walked towards the illusion array. His giant body disappeared from view after he stepped into the fog. The 8 trigrams flags assembled back and enclosed the entire array. I think that young man will be inside for quite a while. The longer you stay inside, the better it is. Even if you can't break the array, you can also drag out time inside. One of the candidates murmured. That's true. It'll take at least 2 to 3 days to assess the hundreds of us. Enchanting stood at a corner and scanned through the rest of the candidates. She smiled slightly when she noticed how the rest felt relieved towards the illusion array. When was it ever easy to pass a sect assessment? Just when everyone thought that they would have to wait for at least half a day, a formidable roar came out of the illusion array all of a sudden. The roar seemed to make the cloud layers below them to tremble. Ah! A horrifying scream was heard along the roar of the beast. The piercing scream seemed to be able to tear people apart. The two sounds hit everyone like a flash of lightning. Previously relaxed people were now all covered with goosebumps. What was that? What is in the illusion array? The roaring sound of the beast greeted their ears constantly. It totally destroyed the calmness among everyone. Such a deep roar had to be made from an extraordinary demonic beast. Was there a powerful demonic beast holding down the illusion array? Suddenly, everyone's good moods disappeared. A stream of blue fog slowly drifted out of the illusion array the next second. A path emerged from the 8 trigrams flags instantly, and a man fled out in panic from the array. The young man who just entered the array a few moments ago was now pale and sweating heavily. The calmness he had before entering the array was long gone, and only a few scratch marks were left on his face now. No one knew what he had just encountered in the array. However, his reaction just now really shocked everyone who was present. Though this young man possessed an orange spirit root, he should not be so weak. He only stayed in the array for a few moments before coming out. Next. The middle-aged man took a quick glance at the young man and commanded. The second candidate shivered. He was totally taken aback by the previous candidate's reaction. However, he had no choice but to step into the array. Everyone was having some deep thoughts after the second candidate entered the array. They looked towards the first candidate subconsciously. The young man was still panicking and upset. Everyone knew what the situation was now, and no one asked him what he encountered in the array. The rules of the sect assessment did not allow candidates to reveal such information. Furthermore, as a result of the competition happening between the candidates, the candidate would not give them any answer even if they asked. This time, the candidate who entered the array did not escape immediately. However, the roaring sound of the beast rose one after another. Soon, a streak of blue fog was seen, and this represented the end of the second candidate's assessment. Even though he lasted slightly longer than the first candidate, the duration was still alarmingly short. Based on this speed, they would need only less than half a day to assess the hundreds of candidates here. The next few candidates who entered the array all did not last very long. All of them came out with pale faces as if they had seen something terrifying. The candidates who were still waiting were close to breaking down. They thought that as long as they lasted long enough in the array, they could pass the assessment. Who knew that things were much more complicated than what they imagined? More than half of the candidates had finished the assessment in less than half a day. Lu Xiaowen would be the next one now. He took a deep breath and stood in front of the array. He squinted his eyes as the array slowly opened up a path. Eventually, he walked in. Among the clouds and fog, Lu Xiaowen did not have a clear view in front of him. He took a few steps forward, and the fog suddenly dispersed. He saw himself standing in a forest, and a pair of red eyes were staring at him through the gaps of the branches. At the next second, a giant beast walked out of the forest. It was a level 5 demonic beast with a height of 5 meters. Its body was full black in color, and its tusks were shimmering under the light. Its deathly red eyes stared at Lu Xiaowen, the only living creature in front of the beast. Lu Xiaowen panicked when he saw the demonic beast. A level 5 demonic beast was not something that the candidates could handle as they had not gone through any training. What's wrong? How can a sect assessment be so difficult? Lu Xiaowen frowned. He did not even wish to beat the beast. He would celebrate in joy if he could escape from it. When Lu Xiaowen was contemplating, the beast roared in rage. Its giant body flew towards him. Lu Xiaowen held the wax ball tighter, but then he remembered what the middle-aged man told them. Nothing inside would threaten your life. A thought came through his mind, and he gave up the opportunity of crushing the wax ball. He immediately pulled out the sword by his waist and blocked the beast's attack. He could feel a heavy weight from the sword, but such strength was totally incomparable with that from a real level 5 demonic beast. Lu Xiaowen's eyes sparkled, and he dashed forward with his sword. As time passed, Lu Xiaowen spent a much longer time in the array than all previous candidates. The middle-aged man's face softened. Though there were some candidates who lasted inside for quite a while, Lu Xiaowen was in a much better state compared to them. A streak of blue fog emerged after a long time. Lu Xiaowen appeared outside the array the next second. His face was not pale but still not very pleasant. Though he found out the trick of the array, he could not find a way to break it. He could only crush the wax ball before he ran out of energy. However, Lu Xiaowen took a breath and looked towards Yunshu. He believed that the duration he spent inside the array was much longer than all previous candidates. Now, there were only Enchanting and Yunshu left. Lu Xiaowen did not bother with Enchanting, who only possessed a red spirit root. Only Yunshu could compete with him at this assessment. Lu Xiaowen, you can now go to the next assessment location. The middle-aged man spoke to him slowly. He was quite satisfied with Lu Xiaowen's performance. Lu Xiaowen spent quite a long time in the array, so all previous candidates had already moved on to the next assessment location. Lu Xiaowen nodded slightly. His arrogant sight swept past Yunshu and landed on Enchanting. He smiled and left. Next, the middle-aged man said. Yunshu took a glance at Enchanting. He nodded and walked into the array. Outside the array, Enchanting was the only person left. A faintly discernible smile emerged on her face. She clearly witnessed the sight from Lu Xiaowen before he left. Lu Xiaowen was quite talented since he could last so long in the array. However, so what? Enchanting chuckled. She waited patiently for her turn to enter the array. Yunshu spent a long time inside. He could only crush the wax ball to leave the array. When he stepped out of the array, he looked towards Enchanting's direction instinctively. He was about to remind her about something when the middle-aged man stopped his words. Yunshu, you can now move on to the next assessment location. Yes. Yunshu wanted to tell Enchanting about the illusion array. However, he did not have any chance to do so and had to leave for the next assessment. The middle-aged man looked at Enchanting with a complicated expression. Enchanting, are you ready to enter now? Enchanting took a step forward and nodded. The illusion array was turned on. Within the sect, the 4 sect elders were staring at the image from the water-moon mirror. All of them did not pay much attention as Enchanting walked inside the array. Yunshu and Lu Xiaowen did quite well in the array. They could figure out the trick within such a short period of time. Elder Lin was quite satisfied with both of their performances. Su Wan and Mou were not too bad as well. I saw that they lasted inside for quite a long time. Though it's not comparable with Yunshu and Lu Xiaowen, they are still up to the standard. The elder of the Fist faction also noticed some potential candidates. Illusion array is now ended then. Elder Lin spoke softly and ignored Enchanting, who just entered the array. Elder Qin frowned. Elder Lin sneered at Elder Qin's reaction. Elder Qin, are you still thinking of that Enchanting? She has only a red spirit root. The disciples previously could not last very long in the array. I'm afraid she will also. The moment when Elder Lin spoke, the 4 elders were shocked by the scene from the water-moon mirror. Enchanting witnessed the illusions appearing in front of her, but she was unusually calm. She stared calmly at the level 5 demonic beast and did not step back at all. Suddenly, she pulled out her sword and pushed herself above the ground, dashing towards the beast. The sharp point of the blade pierced through the heart of the demonic beast. Without any extra moves, the demonic beast collapsed as its heart was pierced through. Its giant body turned into a ball of black fume and disappeared in front of her. The 4 elders were astonished at the moment. All demonic creatures inside the array were made from illusions. Though they possessed the appearances of level 5 demonic beasts, their actual strength was less than 10% of the actual ones. They were almost like normal beasts. However, all candidates were not aware of this, and no one revealed about that as well. The fierce look of the level 5 demonic beast was enough to frighten the young men. Some of the previous candidates noticed the weakened beast. However, under the constant attack of the beast, its giant body, and cruel appearance, all these created huge pressure on the candidates. It was not easy to suppress the pressure. But for Enchanting, she did not even blink before she killed the demonic beast made from illusion with one single move. This was really beyond the four elders' imaginations. After Enchanting killed one beast, she noticed another two beasts made from the illusion. Her mouth tilted. The demonic beast would appear constantly inside the illusion array. Only breaking the array could end this totally. Even if one could kill 1,000 of them, they would be trapped here forever. This time, Enchanting did not attack the two beasts. Instead, she turned and rushed towards the opposite direction in the forest. That's it. In the end, she still cannot control her fear. Elder Lin was no longer shocked. He left a comment as he saw Enchanting escaping from the beasts. However, at the moment when Elder Lin left the comment, all elders were totally stunned by Enchanting's next move. Enchanting's tiny figure dashed across the forest. The trees behind her served as a natural barrier from the two demonic beasts. Her sight was sharp, and she scanned through the trees that looked totally alike to each other. Suddenly, her feet tapped softly and flew towards an insignificant tree. She raised her sword and struck towards the top of the tree. A branch was chopped down. The branch fell onto the ground and turned into a streak of fumes. The fumes then disappeared. The two beasts that were roaring and chasing behind her suddenly became two balls of black fumes and then dispersed. Enchanting landed in confidence and stared at the forest that was slowly disappearing in front of her. A tinge of a smile was seen on her face. Everything in the illusion array was all made from illusions. The only way to break the array was to find out the array center. Breaking the center could then break the array. In her previous life, Enchanting was trapped inside for a long time. She was not willing to give up and struggled with all her strength. She only crushed the wax ball when she used up all her energy. However, in this life, Enchanting lowered her head and stared at the complete wax ball, and a deep smile appeared in her eyes. The illusion array was very difficult for normal candidates. The center of the array was hidden inside the trees that looked exactly the same. Normal people would not be able to distinguish it. However, she had lost count the number of times she entered the illusion arrays when she was in the Xianling sect in her previous life. She could remember everything in the array clearly. The entire forest was now dispersing as layers of fumes. Enchanting witnessed the path that she came from was opened up again. She walked towards the exit slowly. The middle-aged man who guarded outside the array stared at the young lady in shock. The little figure was so eye-catching in the fog. She broke the array. The middle-aged man was totally stunned. The illusion array was the first sect assessment. Only 3 to 5 people managed to do so in the past thousands of years. Those few were extremely talented and were born in array family clans. That was the reason why they could break the array. Those few people spent at least half a day to break the array, and some even spent 1 or 2 days. How much time had passed since Enchanting entered? This amount of time was not even enough for her to see through the views in the array. How could she break the array? The middle-aged man could not figure out an answer, and he remained in surprise. I have broken the array. Can I go to the next assessment location now? Enchanting walked out calmly and looked towards the stunned middle-aged man. Fear came from inside. When one conquered fear, all beasts from the illusion would disappear. The middle-aged man pulled himself out of surprise. He adjusted his emotions and said, "You can now proceed to the next assessment location." Enchanting nodded and left. The middle-aged man stared at her back, and multiple thoughts arose in his head. He found the way Enchanting broke the array peculiar, and instinctively he contacted the elders who witnessed the entire assessment process through the psychic tablet. Only the elders would know what exactly happened in the array. Elders, Enchanting just now. The middle-aged man spoke to the psychic tablet. Before he could finish his words, Elder Qin's voice was heard from the psychic tablet. Enchanting broke the array by herself. There was no abnormality to the array. The middle-aged man was stunned and did not question further. However, within the sect, after speaking to the middle-aged man, Elder Qin looked towards Elder Lin, whose face was unpleasant. Chapter 108, Elder Lin, I'm afraid that you are wrong this time. Elder Qin sneered. Elder Lin's face was very unpleasant now. If he had not witnessed the scene with his own eyes, he would never believe that a 15-year-old young lady would be able to break the illusion array once she entered. The center of the illusion array changed each time it was turned on. Only disciples of the Xianling sect would know about the center. Enchanting was just a candidate, and she was not even born into an array family. How could she break the array within such a short time? Elder Lin remembered how he looked down at Enchanting previously and felt slightly embarrassed. It's pure luck. It won't be so easy for the next few assessments. Elder Lin took a deep breath and tried to hide his surprise towards Enchanting. Elder Qin took a glimpse at Elder Lin and decided not to reply to him anymore. He was delighted, but he sighed at the same time. He was the elder of the array faction, and he definitely preferred disciples who were talented in array formation. He was satisfied with her from the beginning. Her shocking performance during the illusion array made him applaud in awe as well. She was really a rare and talented person. However, Elder Qin sighed secretly. He would really want to nurture Enchanting if her spirit root was of a higher quality. Such a pity. No one would know what the four elders were thinking about. Enchanting also headed towards the second assessment location after breaking the array. Enchanting arrived at the place soon, as the two locations were not far from each other. Yunshu was waiting for the second assessment to begin when he saw Enchanting coming over. He was a little surprised. Lu Xiuwen, who was standing nearby, saw Enchanting as well. But his eyes were full of sarcasm. Enchanting came over slightly after Yunshu reached the second assessment location. She definitely only spent a little while in the array. Lu Xiuwen was confident that Enchanting was like the rest of the candidates who were horrified by the monsters in the array. Lu Xiuwen only glanced at her once and decided not to pay attention to her anymore. A red spirit root was too inferior for a candidate. She definitely did not stand a chance to enter the sect since she flunked the first assessment. Lady Yi. Yunshu greeted her politely. Enchanting took a glimpse at senior brother Yun. He wanted to say something but hesitated. She was amused by his reaction. She was the last candidate for the previous assessment. Only she would know the result of the assessment. It seemed like senior brother Yun thought she escaped from the array in fear, and that was why he showed such a complex expression. Senior brother Yun. I will not be the useless junior sister again anymore. Has the second assessment started? Enchanting smiled and asked. She did not explain much since if she could enter the sect by the end of the assessments, Yunshu would know her performances in each assessment. It's going to start soon. The second assessment is also testing on array formation, but it's a sword array. Yunshu said. Sword array. Enchanting lifted her eyebrows and glanced through the stone table that was around 100 miles away. The stone table was engraved with the 8 trigrams, and a sword was placed in the stone, at the center of the 8 trigrams. Senior brother Yun, this is not an array formation, Enchanting smiled. Not an array formation. Yunshu was confused. Chapter 109. Enchanting used a voice that could only be heard by the two of them and said, "Array formation has a center to break, but the sword array does not. This means that it cannot be broken. The sword in the stone is not the center." Yunshu was not familiar with array formations. "That's not true." Enchanting shook her head and smiled. The middle-aged man arrived at the location when Enchanting was chatting with Yunshu. "The sword array will test how long you can last inside." The middle-aged man opened his mouth expressionlessly. It was another simple introduction without any clues given. All candidates were confused by the rules. They were totally lost after the unpredictable illusion array just now. They could not figure out the assessment ways at all. Testing on duration again. This time would there be any demonic beasts? The standard this time is determined by your situation in the sword array. You can't give up by yourself anymore. If you're hurt by the array, your assessment will end. The middle-aged man walked to the side and added. Hurt by the array. The candidates caught the key information. However, when they glanced at the empty 8-trigram stage, they still could not figure out the nature of the assessment. The first candidate felt extremely hopeless, as this round of assessment was conducted in front of everyone. People behind might still be able to refer to the previous candidates, but he was the first one again. First candidate, up the stage now. The middle-aged man did not leave any thinking time for the candidates. He immediately announced the beginning of the assessment. The first candidate came to the front in despair. However, this time the middle-aged man provided him with a reminder. You can use weapons to assist you in the sword array. The candidate immediately held the sword by his waist and stood on the 8-trigram stage desperately. The middle-aged man then walked to the side of the stage and turned on the sword array. Rays of light suddenly came out of the sword and the stone. The white light covered the entire sword. Suddenly, the stationary sword started to vibrate, and multiple sword shadows emerged out of the sword. The shadows formed 5 lightsabers, dashing towards the air. They turned sharply in the mid-air and attacked the candidate on the 8-trigram stage. The 5 lightsabers shot towards the candidate from all directions. The candidate shivered and then lifted his sword to defend himself. A loud clang rang. The candidate flourished his sword continuously to fend off the attack of the lightsabers. His feet also shifted swiftly for defense. The moment he was hurt by the lightsabers, the assessment would then end. This assessment appeared to be easier than the previous one, and he definitely would put in all his effort to compensate his poor performance previously. The candidate successfully fended off the first attack as the speed of the lightsabers were not too fast. The sword array doesn't seem to be very difficult. The rest of the candidates who were watching the assessment were much more relieved. This was much easier than the illusion array. Enchanting noticed how the rest sighed in relief, and her mouth tilted. Not very difficult. You will soon know how difficult it can be. When everyone was calmer than before, the sword and the stone vibrated again. Another 5 lightsabers flew out all of a sudden. The lightsabers on the stage increased to 10 now, and the speed doubled. The candidate who just sighed in relief was shocked by the 10 lightsabers. Before he could react, the swords dashed towards him with double the speed. Chapter 110. Shadows of the sword shimmered on the 8-trigram stage. The 10 lightsabers flew in the air. Their speed increased so fast that they did not leave any reaction time for the candidate. The candidate's shoulder was cut by one of the light swords before he could adjust his position. The middle-aged man switched off the sword array immediately. The lightsabers on the 8-trigram stage then disappeared, leaving the shocked candidate on the stage alone. The wound on his shoulder was clearly visible. The whole process happened within a split second, which was even shorter than the time he spent in the illusion array. Next. the middle-aged man said. The candidates no longer felt relieved anymore. Previously, they were nervous about the illusion array as they could not see the situation inside. However, though the views inside were terrifying, some who were brave were still able to fight against the demonic beasts. Even if they could not do so, they could still run around in the array to earn some time. But now, there seemed to be a heavy stone pressing down on everyone's hearts. There was totally no time to rest in the sword array. Though the 8 trigram stage's size was at least 100 square meters, where could they run to under the attack of so many lightsabers together? What was more desperate was that even if they could fend off one attack, the number doubled in the next round. The time in between only allowed them to take one breath at most. No one felt relieved anymore. The second candidate had no choice but to step onto the stage. Everyone had a heavy heart now, trying to adjust their state of mind. Lu Xiaowen was calm when he witnessed how the rest reacted. He was quite talented as he went through cultivation with his master at a very young age. He was definitely more skilled than the rest, and he had more confidence towards the sword array. However, Lu Xiaowen's calmness faded slowly as more candidates went through the sword array. The first round was 5 lightsabers, the second was 10, and the third increased to 20. The number doubled each time. Previous candidates only managed to last until the start of the third round at most. If based on this calculation, it would be 40 the next round. How were the candidates supposed to defend that? People were dazzled by the flying lightsabers on the stage. It was difficult to have a clear vision of the positions of the lightsabers. How could they dodge the attacks? This was like fighting against 10 people with one person's strength. The sword array took less time than the illusion array. Candidates who finished the assessment left straight away. Soon, it was Lu Xiaowen's turn. Lu Xiaowen's ability allowed him to push through the third attack with all his strength. Eventually, he was cut by one of the lightsabers during the fourth attack, and his assessment ended. However, he was the best candidate among the rest for now. Yun Shu was the next one after Lu Xiaowen. Yun Shu's results were almost the same as Lu Xiaowen. He struggled for a while more, but eventually, he also stopped at the fourth round. Now, Enchanting was the only person left. I'll wait for you at the third assessment location. Be careful. Yun Shu reminded Enchanting and left. The middle-aged man looked towards Enchanting worriedly. If the illusion array was testing on one's wisdom and bravery, the sword array would be testing one's true fighting skills. Lu Xiaowen and Yun Shu both possessed green spirit roots. It was normal for them to be better than the rest. However, Enchanting. Ultimately, she only had the worst red spirit root. Chapter 111, Enchanting, are you ready to enter the sword array? The middle-aged man did not limit his words this time. Enchanting nodded slightly. She held her sword and walked towards the 8 trigram stage in silence. The 4 elders stared at Enchanting in the sect. Their expressions were delicate. The elders of the Fist faction and Herbal faction did not have many feelings for the young lady, who had an excellent performance in the illusion array. Elder Qin of the Array faction had some interest in Enchanting. Elder Qin, what do you think about her results this time? Elder Lin suddenly asked. Elder Qin took a glimpse at Elder Lin and said, the sword array is set by your sword faction. You should be clearer than me. Elder Lin sneered and then looked towards the mirror. The sword array tests the fighting skills of a candidate. I have never seen anyone with a red spirit root step onto the 8 trigram stage. I can't predict her performance this time. Though Elder Lin did not make it obvious, everyone could sense his sarcasm. Elder Qin frowned. He did not like the tone that Elder Lin used, but he had to admit that what he said was true. The sword array was different from the illusion array. A person without some practical fighting skills could not last long even if they mastered array formations. Yi Qingtang's spirit root. Elder Qin sighed. Yi Qingtang stood still on the 8 trigram stage. The middle-aged man turned on the sword array as he saw Yi Qingtang was prepared. The sword and the stone was surrounded by light the next second. It vibrated slightly, and lightsabers were split out of the stone. When Yi Qingtang took a deep breath and was ready to fight the lightsabers, the light on the sword and the stone suddenly changed. The white light was replaced by a blood-red color. A loud and piercing sound was made by the sword and the stone the next moment. It vibrated violently, and countless light shadows were seen. The middle-aged man's face turned as he witnessed the changes of the sword and the stone. What happened? Why was there a sudden change to the sword and the stone? An ominous feeling crept within him. Only white light should be radiated when the sword array was turned on. How could the light suddenly turn red? The middle-aged man sensed something was not right. He then wanted to turn off the sword array temporarily, but his hand was rebounded off by a strong force from the button. The piercing sound cut through the sky again. Within a second, the sword and the stone that was surrounded by the bright light suddenly released innumerable red lightsabers. The blood-red lightsabers flew into the sky like red rain, covering the whole sky. The entire 8 trigram stage was red due to the reflection of the light. Yi Qingtang felt slightly uneasy as she stared at the bright light above her head in surprise. She went through the sword array in her previous lives assessment. However, she was cut by the lightsabers at the beginning of the second round in her previous life. Yi Qingtang spent a long time in the Xianling sect in her previous life, but she had never heard that the sword and the stone would radiate red light. She could not even imagine the first round of the sword array would have more than 100 of lightsabers. Even Yi Qingtang, who was reborn, was also shocked by the variation of the sword array. However, before she could figure out what exactly happened, the hundreds of lightsabers above her head dashed towards the 8 trigram stage suddenly like raindrops. Chapter 112, This is Bad. Within the sect, the 4 faction elders, who were watching the sword array assessment, suddenly stood up upon seeing the blinding red light. Expressions of shock were etched on their faces. What's going on? Why is there a sudden change to the sword array? Elder Qin's expression was the ugliest. A sky full of red light fell on the ground like raindrops with a speed so fast that one was unable to catch. Under an attack of such a level, a young girl would definitely be unable to block them even if she was a born genius. Similarly, Elder Lin had a look of shock. The sword array was the first segment of Xianling sect's entrance assessment and had been in use for hundreds of years without any errors. But then, such an abnormality happened before his eyes. For normal assessments, the sword array had been weakened a lot, and even if candidates were injured, they were merely minor abrasions. The sword array would definitely not take their lives. However, before their eyes, the lightsabers would only turn red when fighting against enemies. The sword array then was no longer the sword array that the candidates had experienced. This was the real absolute kill sword array. As long as one was attacked, one would definitely lose their life. For a moment, Elder Lin's face darkened as well. Even if he did not like how Elder Qin thought so highly of Yi Qingtang, he did not want the sword array to have any abnormality at this instant. The sword faction was responsible for preparing this sword array. Elder Lin. What exactly is going on? Elder Win asked with furrowed brows. Elder Lin's expression was very ugly. Without explaining further to Elder Qin, he directly reached for the psychic tablet and ordered the middle-aged man beside the 8 trigram stage. Turn the sword array off immediately. If they were any later, Enchanting might lose her life on the 8 trigram stage. Upon receiving the news, the middle-aged man beside the 8 trigram stage was very anxious. He tried to shut the sword array down again but was repelled away by the force once again. Elder Lin, this sword array cannot be turned off, the middle-aged man said hurriedly. Elder Lin's face darkened further. The sword array cannot be turned off. How could it be? Just when everyone was surprised over the sudden change in the sword array, Enchanting, who was standing on the 8 trigram stage, faced her first crisis since her rebirth. Lightsabers pierced down one after another at a speed as fast as lightning. Enchanting sensed a strong overbearing force flowing out continuously from the sword and the stone. She could not care about any other thing and could only lift her sword in the shortest time possible. With a quick flick of her wrist, she made a series of strokes and drew a circle with her sword. Spinning around quickly, it was as though that flash of sword became a silver shield, reflecting away all the lightsabers that were flying down towards her. Suddenly, a loud clang rang. The descending lightsabers clashed against those that were hit away, turning the sky above the 8 trigram stage into a sea of red. The clashing sound was as loud as the sound of the explosion of a massive rock. Enchanting backstepped quickly with clever footsteps which were rapid yet orderly, fast, and steady. Accompanying with the dancing sword in her hands, she actually blocked the shower of lightsabers. All of this fell into the eyes of the 4 faction elders. Originally shocked over the sudden change in the sword array, they were completely stunned after witnessing Enchanting's actions. This girl actually blocked them. Elder Qin's eyes widened suddenly, completely in disbelief over what he saw. The absolute kill sword array could defeat millions of enemies. How could it be blocked by a candidate who has not even entered the sect? Chapter 113. Even Elder Lin's eyes were full of shock. As an elder from the sword faction, no one other than him knew more clearly of the force of the sword array. Although the sword array was only at the starting stage, it was already extremely fierce. He initially thought that Enchanting would lose her life in the first wave of attacks, however. Things were completely beyond his expectations. That is, the 7 stars on moon footstep. An elder from the fist faction sharply noticed Enchanting's rapidly moving footsteps. Her pair of legs were unusually nimble, and although its movements appeared messy, it actually followed a pattern. 7 stars on moon footstep. Isn't that one of the must-learns from that person? Elder Qin asked in surprise. The fist faction elder frowned slightly and took a closer look. It seems like it, but it's a little different. I saw fragments of the 7 stars on moon footstep scroll by chance only once and cannot verify it. Moreover, that lord had already disappeared for a long time. Since that big battle, it is unknown whether he is still alive or not. Now is not the time to consider these. The first wave of attack is ending soon. If the sword array still cannot be shut down, the second wave of attack in the absolute kill sword array will directly shoot out millions of lightsabers. Even the 8 trigram stage would be destroyed, much less Enchanting. Elder Qin took a deep breath and turned to look at Elder Lin beside him. Elder Lin frowned deeply. Instantly, he turned around and headed outside. On the 8 trigram stage, Enchanting's alertness was raised to the extreme. As her quickly turning wrists held on the sword to hit the flying lightsabers continuously, it was already numbed by the force of the impact. At this instant, Enchanting really could not laugh at all. The sword array that she initially thought she could pass easily actually changed suddenly. This change shocked Enchanting extremely, and she could only use the footstep that she used to save her life in her previous life. Enchanting obtained this set of footsteps coincidentally in her previous life. Initially, she did not think that there was anything special about it, but after practicing and mastering it, she found out its secret. It could be said that this set of footsteps helped her escape in the many times she was surrounded by enemies in her previous life. She had no intention of using it in the assessment, but now, she had to use it even if she did not want to. As Enchanting cautiously countered the attack of the lightsabers, her mind was constantly thinking about the sudden change in the sword array. In her previous life when she entered Xianling's sect, she had entered the sword array as well. Nothing abnormal happened to it then, and she had never heard of any accidents in the sword array assessment in the previous years before. How did everything detract from history's track? Could it be? A shocking thought suddenly appeared in Enchanting's mind. In her previous life, she had never used the power of the heart of the demon god, thus, there was nothing to worry about. However, now, the spirit root in her body was formed using the heart of the demon god. Even if Enchanting could hide the heart of the demon god and not let anyone else discover it, the sword array only sensed one's aura and would not be misled by any other thing. Could it be that the sword array suddenly became this violent because it sensed the heart of the demon god in her body? At the thought, Enchanting could not help but break out in a cold sweat. Despite all her calculations, she missed out on the sensory ability of the sword and the stone. It was really too careless. Enchanting was quietly vexed over her carelessness, but her limbs did not dare to relax a little. If she was slightly careless and got stabbed by the lightsaber, she might be buried here. Chapter 114. Enchanting was unaware of how many lightsabers she had hid away already. As the red light in the sky faded bit by bit, Enchanting still could not be at ease. She did not forget that this was a sword array that would continue on for eternity as long as it was not shut down. When she hit the last lightsaber away, she suddenly heard the middle-aged man's screams. Enchanting, quickly take this time to leave the 8-trigram stage. The middle-aged man, who was still unable to shut down the sword array, reminded her immediately without caring about anything else when he saw Enchanting single-handedly blocking the first wave of attack. Enchanting did not say anything else and found a good opportunity to flee from the 8-trigram stage. However, just as her toes reached the sides of the 8-trigram stage, a red light emerged from the sides of the 8-trigram stage. A strong airstream violently flowed through Enchanting. The entire 8-trigram stage was enclosed by a circle of red light instantly. Enchanting's heart was in her mouth immediately. The sword and the stone definitely had discovered the presence of the heart of the demon god. Otherwise, why would there be such a big move to trap her on the 8-trigram stage so persistently until she dies? The middle-aged man below the 8-trigram stage was taken aback as well. He had been in Xianling's sect for many years and was in charge of the assessment many times, but he had never seen the sword array become like this. And at that instant, a piercing sound was sounded by the sword and the stone once again. This time, lightsabers numbering more than 10 times the lightsabers in the first wave suddenly flew up the sky, and in the encirclement of the red light, the surrounding was tainted by the scarlet light like fresh blood, resulting in a patch of crimson. Enchanting looked up. Her black and white eyes reflected countless scarlet lightsabers as though the color of blood filled her eyes. At that very instant, the little black ball within the heart of the demon god was utterly panicking. It could feel the danger that Enchanting was going to face. It wanted to take over the little lightning dragon's body and block everything for Enchanting, but realized that the little lightning dragon's body was still frail and could not withstand the little black ball's occupation since the little black ball took over the little lightning dragon's body once on the journey here. Mother! Mother! The little black ball could only roar irritably within the heart of the demon god. Countless lightsabers hovered above the 8-trigram stage. Under the glimmer of the red light, the middle-aged man outside the 8-trigram stage was completely taken aback. This was it. This was really it. Even if Enchanting had 3 heads and 6 limbs, she would still be unable to block this wave of the absolute kill sword array. Enchanting took a deep breath, narrowing her eyes as she tightened her grip on the sword in her hand. She definitely could not die here. Just when the lightsabers were about to attack, a loud blast suddenly sounded from the sword and the stone. Along with the piercing blast, the sky of lightsabers instantly became an illusion, fading away as they flew down. Enchanting watched the tip of a lightsaber, which was just under her nose, turn into a ball of red light and fall on the ground quietly. The red light that enveloped the 8 trigram stage completely vanished at that moment. Instantly, the entire 8 trigram stage returned to calmness as though the life and death struggle a while ago ceased to exist. Enchanting was slightly surprised but did not dare to rush into any action, and her hand which held the sword was on alert for a long time. Outside the 8 trigram stage, the middle-aged man who was covered in goosebumps suddenly felt a slight tremble in the psychic tablet. "The sword array is turned off, let her come down." Elder Lin's slightly exhausted voice sounded from the psychic tablet. Chapter 115. The middle-aged man was shocked, but he understood the situation. Once the absolute kill sword array started, it could only be closed by a sword faction elder. However, Elder Lin might have used quite a lot of energy to shut down the absolute kill sword array so urgently. "Yes," replied the middle-aged man as he looked up at Enchanting on the 8 trigram stage. "Enchanting, the sword array is turned off already. You can come down." On the 8 trigram stage, Enchanting's breathing was rather hurried. It had not been a month since her spirit root rebuilt, and her body still experienced the pain of having a spirit root dug out, thus, she had not fully regained her strength. Under normal circumstances, she would have definitely died in the sword array. She was able to live until now only because of the experiences she accumulated in her previous life when fleeing for her life. Enchanting took a deep breath and calmed her erratic breathing, though her heart was already on alert. There were many magical objects on Earth, and who knew which of them would be able to sense the aura of the heart of the demon god. She really had to be even more careful in the future. Moreover, she did not know whether Xianling's sect found any clues. The middle-aged man could not help but admire Enchanting when he saw that she was not at all flustered even though she seemed exhausted. If it were to be any other candidate, they most likely would have died in the sword array. It was indeed unusual for Enchanting, however, to stay this calm and composed and even be so indifferent after the incident. "Senior, do I need to retake this sword array assessment?" Enchanting's first sentence upon coming down from the 8 trigram stage stunned the middle-aged man. "Retake the assessment?" The middle-aged man took a look at the messy 8 trigram stage and felt a shiver down his spine. There was a sudden change to the sword array, and God knows what abnormality actually happened. Under such circumstances, the sword faction would definitely not start up the sword array again within a short period of time. Nonetheless, it was good that Enchanting was the last candidate. "There is no need. You can just head straight to the location of the 3rd segment," the middle-aged man said. Enchanting did not say anything further. She had used up too much energy just now, and her body did not have a strong foundation from the start. Using all her energy in a fight like this had physically exhausted her. Luckily, Enchanting knew that the 3rd segment did not require too much energy. After a slight nod, Enchanting left, and her anxious heart calmed down a little. If she could continue taking the assessment, it meant that Xianling's sect did not discover the heart of the demon god. Now, she could rest assured. When Enchanting headed for the location of the 3rd segment, the 4 elders' hearts were heavy. "Elder Lin, why did the absolute kill sword array start without a reason?" Elder Qin looked towards a rather exhausted Elder Lin who was walking back slowly. It is still unknown as of now. I have ordered sword faction disciples to close the sword array down temporarily. I will investigate in detail after this assessment. Elder Lin's complexion was pale. Once the absolute kill sword array started, only he and Xianling's sect master could forcefully turn it off by using large amounts of energy. He urgently closed the absolute kill sword array just now, and, thus, his breathing was still erratic. I hope such incidences will not happen again. The sword array is not set up only for candidates. If we face external enemies and the sword array experiences an abnormality, it would be unfavorable to the sect, Elder Qin said with a slight front. From his point of view, the sword array was administered by the sword faction, and it was definitely the sword faction's responsibility now that something happened to it. This time, Elder Lin did not talk back, and a deep frown set on his face. He himself could not understand why the absolute kill sword array started up for no reason. Forget it. There is no accident in the end. Just pay more attention in the future, said the Fist faction elder, who stood up as a mediator. Chapter 116, That's right. The sword array assessment had already ended, and there should not be any more problems in the future. I believe Elder Lin will be more careful in the future, echoed the herbal faction elder. Elder Qin scoffed secretly. The sword faction was powerful, so naturally, the fist and herbal factions would be biased towards Elder Lin. Just because nothing happened doesn't mean that there isn't a problem. Previously, you all thought that Yi Qingtang's spirit root was too inferior, yet who would have thought that she could actually withstand the absolute kill sword array? Honestly speaking, what do you think will happen if it happened to other candidates? Even if it was Lu Xiuan from the formidable Heavens Royals or Yun Shu from the Lu Yun family clan, they would most probably die should they encounter the absolute kill sword array, wouldn't they? Elder Qin's words were rather sharp. As his voice sounded, Elder Lin's expression turned even uglier. The appearance of the absolute kill sword array was unexpected, but what made him more shocked was the fact that Yi Qingtang could actually bear its attacks. As seen, Yi Qingtang does have some abilities. She is obviously first for the sword array segment today, said the herbal faction elder thoughtfully with a hint of admiration towards Yi Qingtang in his tone. Lu Xiuan and Yun Shu's results were already the best, but they went through only the weakened sword array. Moreover, they only withstood the attack of a few dozen lightsabers. However, Yi Qingtang. In the absolute kill sword array, she dealt with hundreds of lightsabers and retreated safely. Such a splendid record was indeed stunning. None of the outer sect disciples would have performed better than her, much less other candidates. Yi Qingtang, whom they had been pessimistic towards, brought them surprise after surprise. Not only was the herbal faction elder shocked over this, even the fist faction elder could not help but pay more attention to her. There is a strong correlation between the fact that she could bear the absolute kill sword array and that set of footsteps. If those footsteps really originated from the 7 stars on Moon footstep and she could retreat safely, it is also not impossible. Elder Lin took a deep breath, though he was still unwilling to approve of Yi Qingtang. As he said this, his eyes were obviously looking at Elder Qin, who had been strongly supporting Yi Qingtang all this while. Upon hearing Elder Qin's words, the 2 elders from the herbal and fist factions felt that it was logical. After all, the 7 stars on Moon footstep was that mighty figure's special skill which allowed him to retreat safely even when surrounded by hordes of troops. Elder Qin scoffed. He knew that Elder Lin was using Yi Qingtang's incident to go against him, but he was also unwilling to argue with Elder Lin any further. The place of the 3rd segment was much simpler. A huge stone pillar stood on top of the clouds. It was 10 meters tall and could only be encircled with the joint force of 4 grown men. Large lifelike dragons were carved on the stone pillar, making it appear very majestic. A black stone slate, with a dimension of 1 square meter, was hung on the stone pillar. Enchanting rushed up to where other candidates stood, but her pale complexion attracted both Yun Shu and Lu Xiaowen's attention. "Miss Yi, are you all right?" Yun Shu stood forward and asked. Enchanting shook her head slightly, but her lack of strength made her look frail. "Not anyone can go up against the sword array." Looking at Enchanting's miserable appearance and estimating the time, Lu Xiaowen knew that she withstood one wave of attack at most. Ultimately, a red spirit root is still a red spirit root. There was no way she could make any shocking achievements. Enchanting glanced at Lu Xiaowen, and a sneer hung on the corner of her lips. There was still one more segment in the assessment, and she wanted to see how exciting Lu Xiaowen's expression would be when the final results were revealed. Chapter 117. Enchanting was the only candidate who solved the illusion array and was obviously ranked first in the first segment of the assessment. As for the sword array, although there was a sudden abnormality, Enchanting was very clear that it was enough to suppress everyone just based on the fact that she withstood the first wave of attack thus. As long as she was not ranked the last few in the third segment of the assessment, she was confident that she would be able to enter Xianling's sect. "Miss Yi, there is no need to argue with him," Yun Shu comforted Enchanting. Lu Xiaowen had been arrogant for a long period of time and was also a prince, hence, he would not allow anyone to disobey him. While there was nothing to pick on about Enchanting's words before she stepped on the path to heaven, it had already planted the seeds of dissatisfaction in Lu Xiaowen's heart. All of this fell into Yun Shu's eyes, and his opinion of Lu Xiaowen became worse. "I know," Enchanting chuckled as her eyes could not help but land on Yun Shu. Previously, she was only focused on her own assessment and, in turn, neglected something. In the previous two segments, Yun Shu and Lu Xiaowen's assessment results were about the same and were considered to be outstanding. With such top-notch performances, their natural talents should be around the same. However, Enchanting frowned slightly. In her previous life when Enchanting entered Xianling's sect, Yun Shu and Lu Xiaowen had long entered Xianling's sect for many years. But then, Lu Xiaowen had become the best disciple in the outer sect and was only one step away from becoming an inner sect disciple. Everyone in the outer sect all the more followed his lead and was very respectful towards him. Rather, it was Yun Shu, who had a similar level of natural talent, that seemed miserable. Although the Yun Shu then was still skilled, it was far from his stunning performance today. Being in the outer sect seemed a little commonplace. If one were to say that Yun Shu could not win a spar against Lu Xiaowen, Enchanting would definitely not believe it. Many thoughts ran across Enchanting's mind. She had a feeling that something must have happened after Yun Shu entered Xianling's sect. Otherwise, he would not have fallen to that ordinary state as in the previous lifetime. However, the Yun Shu in the previous life had never mentioned any related incident even until death, and Enchanting did not know anything about it now. She could only bury all the confusion in her heart temporarily and start observing after entering Xianling's sect. Just when Enchanting was thinking about it, the third segment of the assessment had already started. The middle-aged man announced the contents of the third segment in front of everyone. All candidates will come forward one by one and hit the black stone slate hung on the stone pillar with their fists. The results of the assessment would be decided by the degree of damage done to the stone slate. Candidates, who had been afraid for a long time, heaved a heavy sigh of relief at the third segment of the assessment. After going through the unpredictable illusion array as well as the dangerous sword array, the third segment unexpectedly looked very easy. At least, they did not need to be worried about being frightened anymore. The previous two segments had already drained the strength of all candidates. If they were to go through any intense assessments now, there would most likely be no prideful results. It was just hitting a stone slate, how hard could it be? The first candidate went up the array without any burden from before. Gathering all his strength, he let out a loud roar and heavily punched at the dark, black stone slate. A loud boom was heard as all his strength was put in the punch on the stone slate. However, a shocking scene appeared. This hit with all his might only made a faint dent on that stone slate that was a finger thick. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.